David, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I'm letting people into the meeting now, so they're joining right now.
Can I close this Zoom? I'm viewing, gosh, are you recording this?
It'll be recorded automatically.
Okay. I don't want to close anything. And I can't see what I look like on camera.
Well, I can see you. I'm waiting. I'm letting people. I'm got my hands full letting people into this from the waiting room here. But
How come I can't see my myself?
I don't know. We'll try to figure it out here in a second.
You look fine, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to change my background for a minute.
Yeah, I got a bunch of books back there, looks like.
Right. But I don't have the ability to change anything here. This is strange. And I can't see any of you guys.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking for everyone too.
I have a big Zoom thing that says sign in.
There we go. I've got people coming on here. There. If I don't know that much about this either, so maybe somebody else can chime in on this. But there's a on the top here. There's a bar that has like the number of people showing, and you can click to one or two or the whole group here. So I'm kind of trying to pull in the whole group here.
No, I understand that. I just can't see myself or the video of anybody that's on camera.
Maybe somebody else has an idea. I'm not that familiar with this either.
okay, go to the upper right corner where it says view. Click on that, and then you have a few choices. So click on like standard.
Oh, there you go.
Side-by-side speakers. See
Okay.
that?
I have 17 people here right now.
Okay.
More are piling in.
Is there a way to change my background?
I've never done that, so I'm not an expert on it there.
Right.
You see my background, that's the room I'm in.
Ask somebody under 30, they can figure it out.
Yeah.
I almost qualify.
Okay, I'm not under 30, but if you go on a start video
There we go.
at the bottom left, there's a little arrow. And it says select the camera. And
There
one
you
of the
go.
settings is choose a virtual background.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll choose this.
I'll shut up now.
Okay.
Very impressive for an over 30.
I'm a college teacher. We've had to use this for a while.
All right.
Can I ask if the issue is trying to get rid of that, the
Yeah.
Zoom screen?
David, you've got the scoreboard now behind you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is
But I
that
have
what
a
you wanted?
big- Yeah, but I have a big Zoom tutorial thing going on in the middle of the screen. I don't know if that's happening to anybody else.
Yeah, I'm
We're
trying to.
seeing it be, stop share, or one of you, Bob or David, whoever's controlling, just
I'm not
simply,
controlling.
simply stop sharing screen.
I think that's Bob that has
Yeah,
to.
it is me, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
I think you go to the top
Where it
And
says share.
And you should be able to reverse the screen share.
Right.
I'm looking for that, but I don't
Down on
see
the
it.
bottom, there's a share screen button. Maybe if you click that, it'll unshare.
Well, I don't see that button anyplace.
What do
here.
you see at the top, Bob?
Well, I see, I'm just at the screen.
At the
Oh,
bottom
okay,
of
wait a
the-
minute. I see, wait a minute. I might find it here. Yeah, I had to get rid of all this stuff. There we
There you
go.
go.
How's that?
Okay.
Yeah,
Hallelujah.
okay.
There you go.
Okay, we've only been on for 5 minutes. I'll go a couple more minutes and still got people in the waiting room
Okay.
coming in. So we'll get them going. And then I think we have 16 people here now. So that's probably pretty good for a Tuesday night here, David. And I want to thank you for doing this. We're looking forward to it here. This
Oh, my
is
pleasure.
really a lot of fun.
Hey, Perry.
Well, I shall introduce myself. I'm Jim Diamond. I've been to a few of your meetings. I am a new member. I joined SABR this year, and I'm associated mostly with Civil War stuff, Rick Solomon, and also with the Buffalo Soldier Museum. I did a calendar for them last year, and we had a really good presentation with Rick Riz, and we'll be doing more.
Yeah, Jim, I've seen a lot of your posts and things like that, and I'm going to apologize to you because I was going to try to do a whole bunch of introductions because we do have a lot of different people coming in, but I think we have too many to do this here right now with people. So sometime later or sometime sooner or later, we'll have an actual Northwest SABR meeting where we're breathing the same air in a room here or something. So.
All right.
Okay, I gotta say it. Vladdy just hit his third home. Vladdy Jr. just hit his third home run tonight.
In the same game,
Same game, yeah.
Yeah,
That was
3 in 1 game already.
Well, Vladdy Jr. lost like 40-some pounds over the winter here. There was an article about his
Yeah, he
regimen.
did S20. Both need to lose just a wee bit more. While Kirk needs to lose a bit more. But I mean, you got to remember, these kids are like 22 and 20.
Uh-huh.
My Nationals are not what they were in 2019. That's all I'll
Uh,
say.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, for a lot of us would be happy to think that sometime within the last couple years we were world champions there. So that's nice. That
By the way, before we get started, I was at a local beer shop today, a specialty beer shop, and I picked up a special IPA called
oh, nice.
Dank Aaron,
Yeah, nice.
and the back, and it says a tribute to the greatest of all time.
Well,
But I don't see an MLB authorization. So this may be a very limited production. I'm not sure.
well, I don't know if what the copyright thing is on somebody's name there. You know, if you can make a Hank Aaron T-shirt or make a Hank Aaron poster, maybe you can make a Hank Aaron beer too. Or it doesn't. Does it say Hank or does it say Dank Aaron on
Dank.
it? Okay,
Dank.
well there you go. There you go.
It have its
Any resemblance is pure coincidence.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll go here. Okay, so I want to welcome David Krell. He is here to talk about his brand new book, And to find all, for those, there are some of us, I'm one of them, who actually remember 1962. And
I can't
and
see it with the screen.
yeah.
Okay.
I was just an embryo myself, but
Yeah, I remember 62. I was a freshman in high school.
yeah, yeah. Actually I was too. That was I would remember that. So anyway, okay, David, I'm gonna give you the screen here and let you go go forth. What we'll do is I think we'll just leave, if you leave time for questions at the end here, and David will be try to answer them there. If you want to get into the chat room, you can put some stuff there too, and I'll try to mouse through it. But it would probably be easier just to do the questions at the end.
Well,
So
should I start?
yeah, and I'll ask everyone else to mute themselves while David's talking.
So basically, thank you for allowing me to join the Northwest chapter for tonight's meeting. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity. This book began in a workshop at Media Bistro, which is a continuing education school, for lack of a better term, in New York City. And they taught a class called Nonfiction Book Proposal. I had taken the class, and from that experience, I was able to publish Our Bums about the Brooklyn Dodgers with McFarland in 2015. So I was so excited. I went back to the class and I had an idea to write about the 1962 baseball season, focusing on the Colt 45s and the Mets. There are a couple of books about the 62 Mets. There's nothing about the Colt 45s. I couldn't find anything. So I thought, this is great. This is a winner. And I went to the class, and the agent who taught the class had also taught the class where the Brooklyn Dodgers book was born. And he said, look, I know you're a baseball guy, and that's great, but books with a broader topic or broader topics get broader readerships. So think about that. I went home. There were a few things I knew for sure about 1962. I knew that Dr. No premiered, the first James Bond movie. I knew that To Kill a Mockingbird premiered. I knew about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I knew the Flintstones were that year. I was fairly sure that The Twist by Chubby Checker was there. If it wasn't The Twist, it was Let's Twist Again, some kind of order. And I started Googling when I got home that night. And I found 40, 50 topics and subtopics and storylines. So when I went back to the class the following week, I said, okay, the shift has gone in a totally different way. It still has to be baseball related, but there's too much here to just focus solely on baseball. So I got the proposal together and I pitched it to Nebraska. And Rob Taylor, who you guys may know from the SABR conferences in the vendors room, he's there along with Gary Mitchum from McFarland and Kristen Karniski from Roman and Littlefield. I pitched it to Rob and he said yes. He said, I like this idea, but it has to be at least half baseball. We're marketing this as a baseball book. So I said, no problem. Now, if you go on Goodreads, I've had a few critiques so far. Apparently, there's something called NetGalley where you can get a free copy of the book in advance in exchange for giving a review. Some of these people are not so pleased with the book. They think it should be baseball, or they were under the impression it's solely or almost all baseball. I guess they missed the part in the subtitle where it says baseball and America. So I'm here to dispel any myths or tamp down any expectations, to tell you how the book is organized. Every chapter has a month. So January, February, March, etc. There are 5 chapters solely about baseball, and those are chapters about teams. So you have the 5 major teams that year. You have the Mets and the Colt 45s expansion. No doubt they're going to be covered. Then you have the Dodgers and the Giants. a 3-game National League playoff. And then you have the Yankees, who faced the Giants in the World Series. So those are 5. The World Series takes up half of chapter 10, and there's a lot of baseball in chapter 1. So essentially, combining everything, it's half baseball. But baseball was just one part of that year. You had the Cuban Missile Crisis. You had Jackie Kennedy giving a televised special in the White House. You had a huge year for movies. We're talking The Longest Day, How the West Was Won, Lolita, Advise and Consent. You have To Kill a Mockingbird, as I said. Big year for literature. If you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis or you've read about it, well, I'm sure you've heard of a novel called Failsafe, which is about what happens when you can't call the bombers back. 7 Days in May, about a military coup that also happened that year. So there's so much going on that I felt compelled to make it Seattle World's Fair. Bill Woodward just put on. Yes, that's covered too. So, and I was getting to that, considering it's the Northwest chapter. But there was so much going on, and the one word to sum up the entire year is progress. This was a year where everything kind of changed. Now, if you look at the space program, we had 3 missions that year. John Glenn was the first astronaut to orbit the Earth. Scott Carpenter was embroiled in a huge controversy, and you guys all know the story about he splashed down a couple of 100 miles from where he was supposed to, and was it NASA's fault? Was it his fault? Well, I bring that up in the book, but that also happened the same month that Bo Belinsky threw the no-hitter. And if you ask people of a certain age, do you remember Bo Belinsky? Oh, yeah, sure. If you say, well, do you remember Jack Kralik? Well, who's he? Well, he pitched one of the other 4 no-hitters that year. But I focused on Bo, and you'll see it in the book, because Bo's life was so interesting that 62 was the zenith. But he had so many ups and downs in his career. He had addiction problems. He found a place in Las Vegas in the last years of his life. Not a great place for an addict, but he found a home. He found a pseudo family with a car dealership that had expanded way beyond Las Vegas. So this book is really meant as a slice of life. I wanted to give people who were around a remembrance of what life was like in 1962. And for those who are too young to remember or who weren't born yet, I wanted to give them a taste of what life was like in 1962. What was the music? What were they watching on television? What was the feeling at Dodger Stadium when Maury Wills was on first base? This brand new, magnificent stadium, and you have the best runner in the majors, 40,000 people chanting, go, go, go. What was that like? So I got a chance to interview Walter Alston's granddaughter. I got a chance to interview Maury Wills himself. So this is really a kaleidoscopic view. That's a word I got last night when I interviewed Emily Nemens, the author of the Cactus League. Perry was there. She'll tell you she used the word kaleidoscopic about her novel about the minor leagues. Well, that's kind of what this book is. It's a bird's eye view. So you can go into any month and say, okay, this is what happened. The most surprising thing in the book to me was not baseball related. In the first chapter, I talk about television quite a bit. And because by that time, television was not just for the rich. In 1948, you had to be of some means to get a television when Milton Berle became the first TV star at Texaco Star Theater. By 1962, it was in 99% of households. There was a show you guys will recall called Route 66. And this is about 2 guys in a Corvette traveling across the country and helping people with their problems. Well, they find themselves in Boston, and they encounter this guy who seems to be ultra patriotic, turns out to be a white supremacist. The FBI recruits the 2 guys to go undercover and take him down. You can make that show today, that script, I am convinced you can produce it today without changing a word, and it's just as relevant, if not more so. That was really scary, but it was also eye-opening because I'm a child of the 60s, of the 70s and 80s. I was born in 67. So my exposure to entertainment of the 60s is really through reruns. But the reruns were rather benign. I Dream of Jeannie, Gilligan's Island, Bewitched, Green Acres, Gomer Pyle. I had heard of these dramas. I was never exposed to them because they just weren't rerun. They weren't syndicated way back when. So to watch Route 66 for the first time was really eye-opening because it wasn't just a benign time. There were hard-hitting issues on Naked City or Route 66, or if you go later into the decade on some other shows. So that was a big eye-opener for me. And I think the lesson I came away with regarding this venture is to just always be curious, because I went down roads and new detours opened up, and I went down those research roads and avenues as well, and other things opened up to the point where I kept putting off the final draft. And when I finally submitted it, Rob told me I had to cut about 65 pages. So it's a good lesson as a writer. Sometimes you need more, so it's easier to cut down. Any writer will tell you it's easier to cut down than to build up. But there is such a thing as going overboard with detail. You don't need so much excruciating detail depending on the length of the book. So we got it down to a manageable size, and I'm really proud of it, and I can't thank Nebraska enough, because they really were patient with this project and allowed me the opportunity to go to different archives. And just a quick aside, and I mentioned this in a podcast, if any of you were at the Houston SABR conference, you may recall that I won the auction to throw out the first pitch at the Astros game that night. Well, the day before, I believe it was the day before, I skipped the conference entirely. I went to the University of Houston to look through their archives, and they have an archive of, it's really a treasure trove of George Kirksey's papers. George Kirksey was the PR guy that helped launch the Houston Ball Club. And in his papers, there are demographic studies, reports, memos, letters, financial breakdowns, ownership breakdowns, news articles, newsletters. So I copied everything as fast as I could and placed an order for more things to be copied. And it just goes to show you, you never know what you're going to find in a library. You never know what you're going to find in an archive. And there's a guy there named Vince Lee. He's an archivist at UH, and he was so helpful with guiding me through these papers. And he had an assistant. If I had a question about a certain article or I needed more material, he'd give it to whoever his assistant was that semester, and they would get back to me that day. I mean, it was just incredible. That's it for the overview of the book. I'm glad to answer any questions you guys might have.
Okay, if you have a question, you can unmute your mute and just go ahead and answer. I think it'll be better to hear, for all of us to hear it there.
Hi, David.
Hey, Perry.
Can you tell us the name of the editor you worked with at Nebraska? I'm just curious.
Oh gosh, who did I work with? It was what?
Mitch?
No, it was a woman. It was
Okay, I was just curious.
oh gosh, you know what? I can't believe I'm blanking out on her name.
But you had a good relationship with her and
With the copy editor?
worked well, or
Are you talking about the copy editor?
no?
Oh.
Did you not work with an editor when you were writing your book?
Well, Rob was the liaison and the copy editor in terms of phrasing and
Okay.
cuts and things like that. There was someone that they used, and I'm gonna have to find it in my my email. I cannot believe that I can't recall it right now.
Oh, it's okay. No big deal. But thank you for encouraging everybody to appreciate libraries and librarians and art.
Oh, they're waiting for you.
Yeah,
They
Yeah.
love the obscure. I
exactly.
mean, really, they, and
Yeah.
especially with baseball stuff, because, you go to the Kennedy Library, and they've heard about the Cuban Missile Crisis a million times, but if you go in saying, gee, do you have anything of Kennedy in baseball? And they found me this photo that's on the cover. I said, oh my God, that's just perfect.
Cool.
That is just absolutely perfect.
What's the name of the book?
1962, Baseball and America in the Time of JFK.
Sounds great.
And the Seattle World's Fair, I got most of that information from the YouTube video that covers, I think it's KING, the
Okay.
2-hour special that I understand was not just in Seattle, it was syndicated along the West Coast.
David, what was the most challenging part of this process for you as putting this book together?
I think the most challenging part of any book for me is organization. You just, I don't care how much information you get, how valuable it is, how rare it is. If you don't have an idiot-proof organizational system, no one else has to understand it, but you have to understand it. And I'll give you an example. I went to the Hall of Fame, and as anybody in the room will tell you, they have player files dating back to the 1860s. So I asked for the files of every single player on the 5 teams that I mentioned. And my idea was, well, I'll make the stack of copies, put a post-it and say, this is the Mickey Mantle pile. Then another stack, this is the Yogi Berra pile, and so forth. Well, when I got home, I don't care if you're going on a Club Med vacation or a work trip, it's exhausting by the time you come home. So I had thousands of pieces of paper, and by the time I'm getting to, get my manila folders out and make the label, right, Mantle, comma Mickey and Berra, comma Yogi, it's exhausting. And it just kind of hit me one day. I said, this is just a stupid way to go about it. I should bring the folders with me to Cooperstown and just fill it out when I'm there. And that little trick saves you so much time. And when you come back, all you have to do is put the folders in the file cabinet. Now, why do I say that? I say that because if you front load the organization, it makes your life so much easier. Because if it's 10 o'clock at night and you're writing and you say, gee, I need that Mickey Mantle article, I remember I saw something, you should be able to find that file in 10 seconds, if not less. And if you just have a file on your computer that says Mantle articles and they're not denoted by date and newspaper, I mean, my trick is I just put the year and the date and the abbreviation. So it'll be like 1971 5-17 NYT or NYP for the post or whatever. You have to be incredibly organized and front load it so you don't have to do it later.
Hey, David,
Yes.
was there anything that really that you learned that really surprised you, or that and if so, what was the biggest thing that really
the Bo Belinsky story? I had never heard of him, and I didn't know the richness of celebrity that he enjoyed for such a brief period of time. But here's a guy who it's just the classic story. He came from a hardscrabble youth in Trenton, which is about an hour from where I am right now. And Trenton in the 50s was not an easy town to grow up in. And while other kids are playing in the Pony League and American Legion ball, he's hanging out in pool halls with guys named Cincinnati Phil and becoming a pool shark, really. So when he bounces around the minors and finally gets to LA, and pitches that no hitter, you're 26 years old and you're in LA, you're dating starlets. Everywhere you go, people are buying you meals. Every bar you go to, the bartender's giving you free drinks. Women want to be with you. Men want to be you. You're a hero to Southern California. And it's a very glamorous existence until it's not. And, the engagement to Mamie Van Doren didn't result in marriage. Perhaps it should have. And the downfall and then his road towards redemption. I don't think he ever redeemed himself in his eyes, at least no one told me that he did, because he did have estrangement from children and marriages and so forth. He had 3 failed marriages, but he knew that he had screwed up along the way, but he was trying to find sobriety, and he found stability with the people at this car dealership that took him under their wing. It was headed by a guy named Rich Abajian, who was a UNLV football player, a former UNLV football player. And Rich was just a great account man. He knew that you're not selling a car to people, you're selling yourself, you're selling that they're part of the Findlay family. And he knew more than just what the person wanted. He knew their likes, their dislikes, their families, etc. And that carries through today to how Findlay operates. And he saw something in Bo. Even though he was younger than Bo looked up to him as a father figure. And to see a guy's journey from being top of the world to the opposite, just an alcoholic and trying to find his way back, it was just gut-wrenching for me. And everyone I talked to from Vegas didn't have a bad word to say about him. They didn't know the Bo that they had read about or heard about. And one example comes to mind. I interviewed somebody who said that when one day they found out that Anne Margaret was appearing at one of the casinos. And somebody said to Bo, hey, Anne Margaret's playing on the Strip. Do you think you're gonna go see her? Will you call her? Do you think you'll go backstage? And he said, that part of my life is over. So he didn't even want to go back to old girlfriends or old friends to say hello. I mean, he brought baseball people into the dealership to, for a promotion or something like that. But it brought back, I would imagine, some painful memories of what life was like, and he doesn't have that anymore. And it was just interesting to hear that story.
When we had a couple of the Negro League guys, that one of them played on the 62 Colt 45s. The guy had batted 400, and he told a story about getting on the bus in Texas in 1962.
Yeah,
he was black, and he couldn't sit, of course, with the white folks, and had to sit in the back. And when he was at the parking lot, somebody thought he was going to park his car, so he gave him the keys to a 1962 Lincoln.
yeah.
And when he got on the bus, he took him and threw him out, and didn't want to be he said that was one of the most humiliating things, that they couldn't even eat in the same way. So that the aspect of the segregation was the thing that really shocked me when I started to look into this era.
Yeah, I didn't cover it too much in the Houston chapter, only because I focused on Dr. Mary Early in chapter 8. Chapter 8 is about 3 women. It's one of the non-baseball chapters, and it's about Marilyn Monroe, who died of a drug overdose in August. It's about Sherry Chesson, also known as Sherry Finkbein. She had to leave the country to get an abortion. She had outed thalidomide as a drug that causes deformities during pregnancy. And she was the hostess of Romper Room. And she was very generous with her time, as was Mary Early. Mary Early was the first Black graduate of the University of Georgia. And some people have asked me, well, why didn't you focus on James Meredith? Well, James Meredith's story has been told. I can't add any value where there have been entire books written by him, or memoirs, or articles. But Dr. Early is a lesser known champion of civil rights. And her papers are at the University of Georgia. So I flew down there and I went through them. And I knew I needed something about civil rights. And thankfully, she was extraordinarily generous with her time, became a fixture in music education in Georgia for decades, and was beloved. If you've ever seen the movie Mr. Holland's Opus, they ought to do another one, Dr. Early's Opus.
So she's still alive?
She's still alive.
Oh, wow.
She's still alive. She's in her 80s. Just an extraordinary woman and an extraordinary challenge. It's like a different planet, what was going on back in the 60s.
Sounds fascinating. I can't wait to read it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, if you do read it, I hope that you consider putting a review on Amazon.
I will give you a glowing review.
Thank you. Thank you. Regarding the baseball chapters, each one focuses on a team, and my beloved Mets, I mean, that 62 team was so bad, but where else can you talk about players like Joe Christopher, who just didn't really play in the majors all that long? Because when I set out to do this, I said, geez, I don't want to do another lengthy piece on Marvelous Marv Throneberry. Haven't we heard about him enough? Even Mets fans, it's oversaturated. It's done. So what else can I talk about besides Marv and Richie Ashburn in his last days as a major leaguer? There's so many smaller players who didn't get a real chance to shine and haven't been discussed in the scholarship. But without them, there wouldn't have been a 62 Mets. You needed to put a team on the field. And it didn't even matter that they were good. They just needed a team. We'll worry about rebuilding later, but let's get a team on the field so they can compete.
David,
Oh,
did you get a
Alec is
chance-
asking about the paperback. I don't know. I'm sure the paperback will be next year. That's my guess.
David, did you get a chance to talk to any former ball players in your putting this
Yeah,
book together?
Bob Aspromonte of the Cult 45s, and he raved about Houston. He loved the fans, wasn't too fond of Colt Stadium. I don't think any players or fans were fond of Colt Stadium. It was muggy. The mosquitoes were all over the place. That's largely the reason why the Astrodome was built, because of the Houston weather. It just gets very, very muggy and uncomfortable. But he loved, you could hear it in his voice. He loved the city. People were, to say that Houston was a major league city and just leave it at that is really unfair, because they had the Buffaloes for so many years. The Houston Buffaloes, that's a great minor league team. Dizzy Dean was on one of those championship ball clubs. But I did get a chance to talk to Tommy Schlamme, and if you don't know that name, you probably know the shows that he has produced, which include The West Wing and Sports Night and Snowfall. And Tommy grew up in Houston. So he gave me an hour of his time when he was visiting New York to talk to me about growing up in Houston, his personal life. And he said, it was just exciting that they would get to see Sandy Koufax or Willie Mays or Don Drysdale coming to Houston. That had never been done, maybe in a barnstorming game or an exhibition or something like that. But now Houston's going to be a major league city, and they will get to see those stars.
David, what were the other teams that you focused on?
Yankees, Giants, Dodgers, Mets, and Colt 45s.
Okay.
And the Dodgers I focused a lot on Dodger Stadium. Maury's interview is in there. I interviewed Don Drysdale's daughter, Kelly, about what life was like. This was a few years before the holdout. So this is really the zenith for the Dodgers, the 60s, 62, the playoffs, 63 sweeping the Yankees, 65, the series against the Twins, and then getting swept by the Orioles in 66. I'm actually working on a book now about 66 for Roman and Littlefield. So the Dodgers was just a national brand. I mean, they were a national brand in New York when they played in Brooklyn, and they're all on the game shows and everything, and they're playing the Yankees every year. But this had a little bit of glamour to it. And Dodger Stadium, even today, looks futuristic, at least modern. So I can only imagine what the feeling was back then. And the people who talked with me said it was just an unbelievable, cozy feeling. It was just one of optimism. One of the things that's come up, and it comes up all the time when you talk about the early 60s. Hey, Dave, man, that's great. The last year of innocence, right? I'm like, nah, I don't think so. We almost went to nuclear war. Read chapter 10. It was the last year maybe of optimism, of pure, genuine optimism, because when Glenn goes up in Friendship 7, we finally were catching up to the Russians. And that was a big, big, big moral boost for the country. Not moral boost, it was a big emotional boost. And then Wally Schirra was the third one to go up that year. So you had 3 successful missions, because success is defined as bringing the astronaut back safely. And Kennedy makes that speech at Rice University. We're going to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade and get him back safely to Earth, or on Earth. And I just found optimism all over the place when I was researching this book. And that's tempered by things like Marilyn Monroe dying, the Cuban Missile Crisis, seeing things like Advise and Consent, or To Kill a Mockingbird, or Days of Wine and Roses about alcoholism on the big screen, things that had never been done before on the big screen, like Lolita. So there were some very sobering topics in popular culture, but overall, you had a youthful president. The Bay of Pigs was a year before, so that debacle was kind of in the rearview mirror, and everybody felt, at least who I talked with, felt optimistic. It was just that period of time.
When we see game pictures of that era, what strikes me is, first of all, the fans are a lot of guys are wearing suits and ties to the baseball game, and they're wearing white shirts and things. I know that was an issue with Dodger Stadium.
Well, I have a theory about that. At least when you go way back to the 20s and 30s and you see them in the suits, games only lasted 90 minutes, less than 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So a guy could leave the office, go to the game, and basically take a long lunch. But yeah, look, if you're from New York and Brooklyn, and the Dodgers are moving to Los Angeles, and it's like Billy Crystal says in the Ken Burns documentary, what, they're building it in a mountain. What's Doris Day doing at a baseball game? No, the stadium needs to be in a city, not out in the middle of nowhere. But it's become a fixture. It's become a fixture in baseball in America. No way. Perry Lee Remick went to your school?
Yes, one of our more well-known graduates, Phoebe Cates, is another. Yeah. Nikki Fink, if anybody knows anything about.
Yeah, she's a gossip.
Yes, yeah. Very, very successful. She's retired. Basically, she sold her column, her business, for a lot of money.
It was asked about one of the things that surprised me. I had always learned in college, in communications classes, that the news media really became of age in television when Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Like, that's when breaking news was created, at least in terms of television. And television news came into its own during those 4 days between the assassination and the funeral. But the TV special about the Seattle World's Fair, I think, is really where it began, because they had reporters everywhere. I mean, we call them remote or live shots. They had reporters all over the park, all over the fair. And in the middle of all this, the news anchor, this longtime news anchor, I think he was a fixture in Seattle television, he had to convey that there was a small plane crash that happened in a neighborhood. And I mean, to do that with the aplomb that he did shows you why he was a fixture in Seattle TV, because you're conveying that against one of the biggest marvels of the 20th century. I mean, this unveiled technology, predictions of what people would be doing in the year 2000, films. Kennedy started the festivities remotely by pressing a symbolic button. So I that's another thing that I thought was really interesting. The invention of TV news as a live format.
And with the games, I mean, I assume the World Series games were all afternoon games at that point, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to take radios to school and listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different world now.
Hmm.
It's just completely different. Starting a World Series at 8:30 is not my idea of a practicality.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
But it's money conscious. They have to get back to, they can make money, but to squeeze it out in prime time, and then the local stations don't want to give up their time, right? So it's too valuable to knock off Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune. If ABC is doing the World Series, that's a very difficult thing to convince them to do.
So what were the players' salaries in '62?
Not nearly enough.
I know that, yeah.
I think Mantle made 70 grand one year. Was that right? I want to say, or 125. No, I think Maris was making 70 and Mantle made 125. And they made money in endorsements, certainly. But nothing like today, but they didn't have the TV money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, MLB can license this stuff worldwide. The merchandising opportunities are just astronomical. So the players are taking a slice of that. And they didn't have that opportunity way back in the day. So
in '62, the owners made more money still from attendance in the stadium.
Well, yeah, that was the name of the game, because you have the concessions, you have the parking. I mean, O'Malley, in a car conscious culture, Dodger Stadium, I think if I'm not mistaken, the parking lot was designed so wherever you park, you're entering on the same level, wherever you are in the stadium.
Yeah, that's right.
And he saw it. He saw it. He was a money conscious person. People could say he was greedy. I'm not going to cast aspersions because they all have to make money, but he knew that there was gold in them there hills. If you can pay for parking, that's going to be more money into the bottom line.
So David, let's sell the book a little. Now, when is it coming out so we can actually buy it?
Well, here's the thing. If you want to buy it on Amazon, you can do that. They're having a 13% discount right now on hardcover. If you want to buy it on Kindle, it's 51%. I don't know how long those promotions last. If you want to buy it on the University of Nebraska Press website, it's a 40% discount on all baseball books through May 31st. It'll be available in the stores, I'm told, Saturday. It might be available in your local store now. I know it's available here in at least one store nearby. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll see that I signed some copies that they can promote as signed by author at the Indigo store in the Short Hills Mall. And that's all I know so far. I don't know how long these discounts last on Amazon, but I do know the Nebraska one only till May 31st. And Nebraska has some outstanding titles this year. There's a Dave Parker memoir. There's a book by Eric Sherman, an oral history of the '86 Red Sox. There's, oh God, who else? Tony Lazzeri, Lawrence Baldessaro wrote a bio of Tony Lazzeri. There is a Horace Stoneham biography coming out, 40 Years a Giant. So some really outstanding work that's being done in baseball scholarship.
It's a ways off, but there's Elliott Bay Books, which is a big bookstore in Seattle.
Yeah.
We'll have a baseball presentation with several local authors and members of this chapter.
Oh, that's
in Ju-
fantastic.
In June there. And for SABR members in Northwest SABR, I'll be posting that and how to get it's a virtual thing, how to access that.
Right.
But since it's on topic a little, while we have this time, I thought I'd mention
Well,
it.
I mean, but that's important for authors. I've been engaging with bookstores and libraries to do that. My hometown library in Springfield, New Jersey, I'll be doing a Zoom event with them next month. And it's just incredibly important. And I don't know how many of you guys are, are writing for SABR or contributing articles, but we need more articles. We need more books, not less. We need more contributions because there's always another way to look at a different topic or a different year. We have how many people, 15, 16 in the chat room. If we all wanted to write a book about Babe Ruth, we'd have 15, 16 different versions of what we think are important and valuable about Babe Ruth. So there's always room for one more interpretation.
The cover photo of the book with JFK, is that opening day in DC Stadium?
No, that's the All-Star game.
Oh wow, it was in DC at the time?
It was in DC,
Oh, wow.
and I don't think he stayed for the whole game. In fact, I'm 99.9% sure he didn't. But what's interesting is how dated the photo is. You would never have a president behind the dugout throwing the first pitch. I mean, it's such a different time. It's almost quaint in a way to think that that's how it was actually done. So that was.
Didn't they have 2 All-Star games in '62?
They did. I mentioned that in the book. I mean, I don't cover the game totally in depth, but I was pleased to get the photo. And when the archivist showed me on the screen, here are the photos of Kennedy and baseball. And when I saw this one, I just leapt up from my chair and I said, oh my God, I got to get this to Nebraska as quickly as possible.
Was the other All-Star game the one in San Francisco when Stu Miller got blown off the mound?
It might be, I believe so. I mean, I focused on this one because Maury was heavily involved with it. So that came up in the interview, and I don't focus too much on it because the San Francisco Giants chapter, I didn't want to sacrifice that chapter for too much about the All-Star game. And that chapter will also cover lesser known players, as will the Yankees chapter, people like Hector Lopez or Luis Arroyo, who don't get enough credit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what SABR is. We're all about the unsung. We speak with passion as much about a relief pitcher that no one's ever heard of as we do about Lou Gehrig, because everyone has a different bent or a different thing that they're excited about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any other questions for David?
Great presentation.
Oh, thanks. Any questions, comments, rebuttal, argument starters?
It sounds like an exciting book. I'm really looking forward to getting it.
Thank you. It'll give you a taste of what life was like.
Well, I turned 14 in August of '62. Graduated from 8th grade in June and started freshman high school in September.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that was the most fun was like taking what I knew and then finding all the stuff that I didn't know.
That's
right?
a joy of research.
Like interviewing Joe Barbera's daughter or Martin Milner's wife about the Flintstones, about Adam 12 and Route 66. George Maharis is still around, 91, sharp as a tack.
Oh,
I interviewed him.
I used to
And
have such a crush on him.
oh, he was great. And not only did he know what episode I was talking about when I asked him, he knew the titles of the episodes. He knew the guest stars in the episodes. I mean, this is 60 years ago.
Didn't he put out albums too? Wasn't he?
I think he was a singer,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Who was
he was just the one that's one of my favorite episodes that starts the book. But there's another one when he left the show and Glenn Corbett took over. It's called What Do You Do in March? And you can see it on YouTube. And that's really the epitome of pre-assassination, Camelot, optimism, feel good, all of the things that you hear about the 60s. It's just kind of encapsulated in that. And 62, I think, is just so important because I've seen books, as you guys have, on 67, 68, 69, 73, 86, 21, 27. I couldn't believe this book hadn't been done. And I'm not saying that this is the definitive book. I'm sure someone else will write about the 62 Colt 45s or the 62 World Series, but it just seemed to have been glossed over. And when I went home that night and I started researching, I said, geez, no one's done this. This is a sign, because there's that adage in publishing, if you're looking for a book and you can't find it, that's the book you should write. Right? That's the book you should write.
Good advice.
And Perry will tell you, because she's heard me talk about this all the time. My top two choices for Hall of Fame members who are not yet in the Hall of Fame are Charles Ebbets and Joan Payson. And I was really happy to have Joan Payson in the Mets chapter, because she is largely overlooked by the voters, by baseball scholars, by Mets fans. She's largely overlooked. I mean, they're putting a statue of SABR. They should put a statue of Joan Payson.
Did I tell you that she put my vet that I took my cat to see down here through vet school?
Oh, I think you did.
I found out when I took my cat to see him for the first time. My housemate uses him as a vet, and I walked in wearing a Mets mask, and he said, "Are you a Mets fan?"
Yeah.
This is Port St. Lucie, Florida, where the Mets have spring training.
Right.
And he said, Mrs. Payson put me through vet school because when he was a kid, he had gone out to her stables on Long Island where they had racing horses, apparently, and he took care of the horses, and she liked the way he treated her animals. So she put him through vet school, and 60 years later,
Alex mentioning Vaughn Meter. Yeah, Vaughn Meter's in there.
Vaughn Meter. Oh,
Vaughn Meter is definitely in there. I had the opportunity to interview the woman who voiced Jackie Kennedy on the First Family album.
I'm the first daughter of the first family of the first country in the world. Remember that one?
No.
No? Oh, that was on one of his albums.
But I mean, here's a guy, someone will have to write a book about Vaughn Meter. He had everything. I mean, kind of like Bo in a way. I mean, for 1 year, Vaughn Meter was it. He was it.
He was, definitely.
And then the assassination happened.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's a sad story, but yeah, he was quite a cornerstone of pop culture in that time period that we're talking about. Harry, was that song on the First Family album?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I'll have to go back and listen to
Yeah.
it. And he did a second First Family album because that one was so big that they had to capitalize on it right away.
Yeah. Did it have a picture of him standing in front of the White House with the gate?
That was the first album, I think. Yeah.
That was the first album. I think Naomi Brossard, who was Jackie Kennedy, said that the picture was actually taken at Central Park, superimposed over the White House.
Uh-huh.
There's a
Okay.
good Tell the Truth episode on YouTube if you guys are interested, on which of the actresses is the one who voiced Jackie's voice on the album.
Oh. Oh.
And that's covered too. I mean, this is really, it's marketed as a baseball book, but it's also a slice of life. It's what was going on that year.
In your opinion, was baseball still the prime top of the ziggurat sport, or had football started to really?
No,
take it
I
at that
think
point?
until the 90s, I think baseball was the national pastime. Once you got, once football started playing at Wembley Stadium and getting bigger TV contracts, interleague play, I think, has a lot to do with the dissolution and more expansion. It's hard, you're covering, before expansion, you're covering 16 teams. You're covering 8 teams in a league, which means that if you're a Giants fan and you're playing the Cincinnati Reds 22 times, that means as a fan, you know the Cincinnati Reds, you know the Dodgers, you know the Boston Braves lineup as well as your own. When you're playing 11 times at home, 11 times on the road, we don't have that. And it doesn't stay, people don't stay with the game. We have a lot of marketing problems with the game that you guys all know. So yeah, baseball was still the national pastime. And if you remember in the 60s, the Dodgers were all over television. So that also helped cement them and the sport as a national brand. They're on Mr. Ed, the Munsters, the Beverly Hillbillies. It's something that doesn't exist anymore. There was some kind of, gentility may be the wrong word, but there was a definite inclusiveness that you saw. Maybe it's because we had less entertainment choices.
Well, for most of us, like me living in southern Indiana, baseball was Saturday afternoon game of the week on TV, and that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, and that happened through game of the week, I think, ended in the 90s. I could be mistaken about that. And the only other national game was Monday Night Baseball. And that didn't happen in the fall because when football came, that was it. So you had Monday Night Baseball maybe in the spring or summer.
Yeah.
And you had Howard Cosell, and that always added a little fun to it. And they'd have, Tom Seaver or Don Drysdale, and they were having fun. The game is so analytical now. I think it's overanalyzed. They might as well have robots be managers because everything is, well, he can only pitch 87 pitches and he can only pitch 75 pitches and he can only hit when there's a full moon and it's 74 degrees or less. There's a danger that we're all facing, but that's part of another issue.
Okay, I think we're just about out of time here. Does anyone have any bon mots or anything else they want to ask before we say goodnight?
Good night, Gracie.
Okay, well, David, we want to thank you very much. It's been just great. Everyone
Thank
who
you.
showed up here, it's been nice to see you. I'm glad we had this time together, and we look forward to doing a SABR thing again sometime soon.
Likewise. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. We're all looking forward to the book.
Be well, guys.
Thank
Okay.
you.